Welcome to the Trick Play Podcast. The full podcast is available on both YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast. I'm Simon Szyszkowski here with Peterson, and shortly we'll be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. This week, we talked about all the fun stuff we actually hit the NBA this week, so I can say 3 different sports. It's not just NHL and NFL anymore. We're hitting the NBA, people. We start off, though, in the NFL, where we talk about the Vikings potentially taking a swing at neighbors and potentially trading Justin Jefferson while they did it, which was a wild headline to read. We talked all about that. Then we talked about some more NFL schedule stuff and how the Chiefs basically have almost play every single day of the week at some point in the season, except for Tuesday. And we talk a little bit about how much American NFL fans will have to pay for each game this season, because that's kind of been a big headline the last little bit. Moved into the NHL. We talked about Utah and some of their names that could be potentially thrown on that team over there. Then we talked about Knobloch making a rather interesting comment about how the NHL playoffs work related to the penalty calling. And we talked about some Mitch Marner trade packages. And then we finished it off, like I said, in the NBA, where we talked about the Pacers and their potential breakthrough into the conference that we saw this season, and whether they can continue it going forward. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, as we have new content coming out every single week on each and every one of those platforms. Caleb, are you ready to go?
Absolutely. Now, it's the off season in the NFL when stuff like this starts to fly around. One of the biggest rumors, and I'm going to stress rumors, of the last week in the NFL was this whole story that came out of Minnesota, where apparently there was rumblings in the Vikings draft room that if they were able to, the Vikings considered trading up to draft Malik Neighbors. And in doing so, they would have traded Justin Jefferson in the process. Now, I want to, before everybody in the comments goes off and kills us for this, it has been refuted by ESPN's Kevin Seifert, saying, this is a cool story, bro, but not true, basically. It is interesting to talk about, though, because I think the fact that we can even get to this conversation and say, well, obviously that's stupid, but why would they think of doing that? I think it does bring up some interesting possibilities. Now, Simon, when you heard this rumor, was there any sort of devil's advocate in your head going, well, I can see why they might want to do that?
Well, and I said this to you when you brought it up, actually, was just the fact of the only possible thing I could think of was salary-wise. Maybe, I don't know how long, off the top of my head, I don't have the number in front of me, how long Justin Jefferson's rookie contract continues to go on here. But I
think it might be the last year.
Is it the last year? Well, then there you go, right? That I feel like the only reason that would possibly make sense is if you already kind of know you're having issues. There's a potential he might not want to come back, and if he does, you're paying him a lot more than you might want to, which I think is going to be the case anyway. He's probably going to want a boatload, but yeah, salary's the only thing I can think of, because you're basically trading one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL for, Neighbors is going to be good. I think that's the general assumption. The Giants have obviously got themselves a very good prospect, but are you really going to go right out and assume that he's going to be better than Jefferson? That feels insane. Even if he is a good prospect, that's not a risk you want to take. It's just, I don't know. At least to me, playing devil's advocate for something like that feels insane if you're going to ignore the potential cap issues that they might be having behind closed doors. But I don't know. Right off the jump, it just feels rather strange, for sure.
Yeah, and obviously, it was probably it's kind of come out the last couple days. Nothing to begin with. I do think it's kind of an interesting thought experiment. I think you're right in terms of it's probably the contract that's going to be the killer here, If they were at all considering doing this, at all considering moving on from him, I think you look at a couple things. I think you look at the fact that this team probably isn't going to be very good, at least for another couple of years. Obviously, drafted J.J. McCarthy, not necessarily the most home run swing type quarterback prospect. You've got obviously right now a good receiver core, but past that, not a ton of talent, kind of a roster that's aging out a little bit. And after the loss of Kirk Cousins, you're kind of scrambling, looking what to do. Maybe you think hit the reset button, trade, get a ton of draft capital back for Justin Jefferson, and like fully rebuild. Obviously, that's still kind of absurd because nobody you're going to draft is going to be as good as Justin Jefferson. But maybe you think that way just because of how much money you'd have to pay him for the team to probably not even contend. The other thing that I can think of maybe is maybe they're thinking that they want to do what they did with Stephon Diggs again, where the whole reason they got Justin Jefferson was they traded Stephon Diggs when he was still good to get a draft pick to replace him. And obviously that worked out great for them. Stephon Diggs was also good in Buffalo, but they got a significantly better receiver in Justin Jefferson. And maybe they're thinking, well, hey, maybe we can do the exact same thing again and maybe get even more. But even then, I think that thinking is flawed. We've seen other teams try to do it and it hasn't worked. Cough, cough, Titans trading A.J. Brown to draft Traylon Burks, that kind of thing.
That's actually a really good example.
Yeah. So I think, I think those reasons potentially are why you might do it, but I think all of them kind of fall flat when you put a little bit more critical thinking behind it, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, it's way harder to play devil's advocate. I mean, we can shit on the whole idea behind the entire thing for hours if we wanted to, because yeah, like you said, like I think that's a good point. I think that is a good point because they did pull it off getting Jefferson and trading Diggs, but I mean, you got to think that's more luck than actual scouting or anything related to that, because I mean, at the end of the day, no matter how good a prospect is, there's always going to be a couple busts. And I'm not, again, I'm going to emphasize this because I'm going to say this a lot, I think, in this segment. I'm not saying that I think Neighbors will be a bust. I'm just saying that I think the chances of him being even remotely close to what Jefferson is in the NFL is probably a chance. You probably don't want to roll those dice, like, realistically. No. I think right now, if they were to offer a trade to the Giants, Jefferson for Neighbors, and of course they would have gotten something else for Jefferson. I'm ignoring that. But if you were to offer that to the Giants, I think the Giants would immediately take that in a heartbeat, and all of New York would instantly celebrate. Like,
oh, absolutely.
And it's not a diss on Neighbors. It absolutely isn't. It's just the fact that Jefferson is an insane receiver.
Yeah, and it's unproven commodity for known quantity, right? Like, I think even just that, like, even if Neighbors is that good, it's still an if. And I think that takes away a lot of it. I think if we're gonna think about this more and kind of play this out a little bit more, I'll just kind of throw the question to you. Obviously, trading up for Neighbors to trade Jefferson, not gonna happen. Didn't happen, and kind of ridiculous in premise. What if you're the Vikings, what would you accept in a trade for Justin Jefferson? Ooh. How much would it take?
It's so weird asking questions like that these days, especially with how low we've seen some trade deals be for players not quite as good as Jefferson. I still think he'd probably be the best one out of the bunch, but you got to think it'd be a first, right? At least for me, you got to think at least you're getting a first. Like, it'd be insane to get anything otherwise.
You're going too low immediately.
I know, and I know that. Like, in my head, I immediately think, like, what I'd be trading for him in Madden. I'm thinking I'm not going to have a first-round pick for 5 years. But it's the type of thing where some deals have been so... Like, what did they trade Diggs for back in the first place? What did they get for him? Wasn't it, like, a first-round pick? Yeah, it was a first. Did they get anything else, or was it just one?
To get Jefferson...
Yeah.
I
guess I'm asking you, assuming you know off the top of your head.
No, I don't. But yeah. I'm looking it up right now. I know it was it was obviously the first round pick.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they got like a first and a
which I
bit
believe
more.
was I believe it was like pick 2022
Okay.
that they eventually took Justin Jefferson with.
If we're talking about a fair package, I think they should be asking for as much as like 2 first-round picks for the type of talent you're going to get out of Jefferson. Will
I
they
would
get
say
that?
even 3.
You think
I
3?
would say 3.
Okay.
I think 3.
Do you think they
3
get
plus
3?
I think 3 plus a player is the bar.
Okay. I do agree with you. I think that is what he's worth. I think he's worth that much. I wonder if a team's going to actually be willing to give that up. Because we've just seen in the past player. You think so? Okay. Because
Justin Jefferson, I think, is a whole nother.
You also got to think about the fact
continent.
that but he's on an expiring contract.
Yes, I think even then.
Okay.
Even then, maybe that takes it down. Maybe that does take it down to 2 first-round picks, but I still think that's even low.
Oh,
like
yeah,
I would
absolutely.
still go 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, well, it's just I don't know. It's so weird because we have this kind of conversation where we're like, yeah, it's gonna be 3, it's gonna be like 2, it's gonna be, and then he gets traded and it's like a first and a third, and we both end up sitting here looking stupid. Like
Yeah,
that,
but
it's one of those
because
situations.
it's Justin Jefferson, that's not going to happen.
Okay.
He's not going to get traded in the first place.
Yeah.
But B, even
well,
even if he were to get traded, it's not going to I don't think. Because a lot of the times when we think, oh yeah, this guy could fetch a lot more, like with Stephon Diggs recently, like,
That's
oh,
true.
like, what, it was a second? Like, it's because they're older players. Like,
Yeah,
Jefferson is coming off of his rookie deal as, like, by far and away the best receiver in the NFL. None of these guys who have been traded, like, are the best receiver in the NFL at the time of trade. And none of them
That's a good point.
are as young as Justin Jefferson is. Like, I think that's a big deal. Yes, contract extension. Yes, there'll be few teams who will even have the money to pay him. But I don't know. I think for Justin Jefferson, you find a way to make it work. And I think the Vikings will do the same, and extending him. For the Vikings, hopefully soon. You don't want to push that number up even more. You see other receivers start getting contracts. That kind of pushes the number up a little bit.
It's also probably the best time to do it while your quarterback's still young. Like J.J. McCarthy, you probably want to sign that, get him locked down for as long as possible, right? At least that's what I think.
You gotta hope J.J. McCarthy's good too, or else.
Yeah.
Not
that or Sam Darnold, baby.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sam Darnold.
It's gonna be great. That or Nick Mullins. That's gonna be. They've got a pretty goddamn good quarterback room there in Minnesota.
Oh boy. Does Justin Jefferson even want to stay at this point?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe that is why. Maybe because I wonder what Kirk leaving does to affect that relationship there in Minnesota. I wonder.
Yeah,
Justin Jefferson to Atlanta.
That would be insane.
That would be insane.
But I do know that that Justin Jefferson was a big proponent of the Vikings re-signing Kirk and was going to be not happy if they didn't. So I do wonder if that's more of a thing than anything. But yeah, still I think just to kind of wrap up the conversation in terms of the trade rumors, it's not going to happen. We can go through reasons as to why it might, but ultimately I think he's going to stay. It would be a pretty big shock if he went elsewhere. And I mean, Minnesota's all the better for it, right? When you have the best receiver in the league, you don't let him go. I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. No, and I think the question I'd toss back at you just for a bit of fun would be if, because are we assuming that they'd get 2 first-round picks or 3? If just to put a guess.
I would assume at this point, at this point, let's say just because it's an expiring contract, 2 and like a Pro Bowl level player, not like but Pro Bowl level player.
Okay, well let's assume if you were the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, would you rather have Justin Jefferson or Neighbors, a Pro Bowl player, and 2 first-round picks? Because that makes it a bit more interesting.
If you include Neighbors in there,
exactly. Then it gets a little interesting.
I think it depends. I think it depends what player you get. Um,
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely.
then are we assuming you don't have to trade up for neighbors? Like we're assuming like the Giants are just giving us neighbors.
Um, ooh, for the sake of this, we'll say the Giants are giving up neighbors. We'll say that
Okay.
this is a trade in between the Giants and Minnesota.
And the Vikings for
Yeah.
two first round picks from the Giants, neighbors, and who would we get from
Who would yeah? Who's a who?
some
Just name a Pro Bowl
insert Pro
player.
Bowl player from the
Yeah.
Giants is kind of tough.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
who's their
Oh,
defensive? Brian Burns feels a bit rich
yeah.
for them to include in that. Dexter Lawrence maybe a bit rich too. We'll say
I don't even
hmm,
know.
we'll say you know what? Let's say Kayvon Thibodeau.
That's what I
Like
was gonna
Kayvon
say, but I don't.
Kayvon
I didn't know if I'd consider. I don't know if he made the Pro Bowl last year. I couldn't
I don't know if he
remember off
made
the
the
top
Pro
of my
Bowl,
head.
but I'm thinking that kind of caliber of player. He will at some point in his career.
Yeah.
And if
Okay.
I'm the Vikings GM, like I don't know, it's gonna take some wrestling.
Yeah.
I
It
might
definitely. It's not an easy question to answer for sure.
it
Because
does
it's a
depend on
risk.
what the team is. So
Yeah.
because it's the Giants, I might honestly I might do it.
Oh,
Just
okay.
because I think those first round picks will be high. Because then you get a
Mm.
potential replacement in neighbors, you get Thibodeau, and then you potentially can rebuild. It's like because it's like trades like that where you get multiple high first round picks that kind of revitalize the franchise, right?
Yeah.
Like look at the I mean the most obvious example is like the Herschel Walker trade back in the 80s where that's where the Cowboys 90s dynasty was built with how many picks they got from um no kidding the Vikings. Um or even more recently, like the Russell Wilson trade, where Seahawks
That's
didn't miss
true.
a beat and made the playoffs the first year after trading their 10-year franchise quarterback because of how many players and picks they got in the Russell Wilson trade, and that's led to them having all pro players like
We
Devin
can say
Witherspoon.
that's yeah we can say that's why, and not Geno Smith instantly becoming a god out of nowhere for no reason at all.
I mean, well that helps. That helps too.
Yeah,
But
Seattle definitely
but
predicted that. They knew that was gonna happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
they wrote him off, but he didn't write back though. We love
Yeah.
Gino.
No,
Um,
and the reason I brought up the question was because I think I'd absolutely take that. I think with the potential we've
if you're the
heard and the
Vikings,
ways, if I'm the Vikings, I think you gotta take that because in that situation, even like as crappy as it is, let's assume worst case scenario, Neighbors doesn't work out. You're still getting a Pro Bowl type player, and two first round picks to just hope you get something good. At worst case
yeah,
scenario,
but
your team is still getting younger, which is kind of what the Vikings need. Not to say Justin Jefferson isn't young,
yeah,
but
but
at the very least, it's
it is
helping the
still
rebuild.
basically
That
3 lottery shots. Like
yeah,
that's the thing.
yeah,
Worst case scenario, you just get Kayvon Thibodeau.
I guess. But that's assuming if that happens, that's on you. If you're the general manager, that means that you missed out on two first round picks. Couldn't develop neighbors. Like at that point, you're fired.
Yeah,
You got fired a year before that the last draft pick came through. Like
yeah. No, that's fair.
yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, though, I think no matter what, it's kind of uh, at the end of the day, it kind of worked out for Minnesota. They still got their future quarterback,
Yep.
assumingly their future
And
quarterback.
they didn't even have to trade up that much for him, eh? They only
What did
traded
they
up
have to
one
give up
spot.
again?
Like I think
Yeah, like I don't think it was
not
much.
very
Was it?
much to
Yeah,
trade up one spot. They also ended up getting Dallas Turner
that's
in
true.
at
Yep.
17. So they got a
At
great
the end of the
defensive
day, they
player. They
did
got a
have a
great
pretty good
quarterback.
draft.
Yeah, they did. I think it'll be. I think the season will be very interesting for them. It's one of the biggest transition years they've ever had. It's a Justin Jefferson contract year, if he even makes it to that, if they don't extend him before the season. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think they'll
No,
be an interesting team to watch.
yeah, especially I mean in that division, no, not happening.
Yeah, which we talked about on this
Yeah,
on the long lost secret tapes.
and
Last
just to be
week.
clear, I would put the Bears ahead of them as well. Like that, and that puts, and that's not even saying that I actually do like a lot of the things that I see from Minnesota. I think they have a lot of good young pieces that if they break out well and everything goes well, you never know, right? Like when you have that amount of young players, the sky's the limit at the end of the day. You never know what's going to happen. For all we know, J.J. McCarthy could come into the league, have a great rookie year. That entire offense just flows well. Their defense ends up working out somehow, but don't worry about it. Like, you never know what's going to happen.
They've got a good coach. They've got a good
that's
coach.
True too.
Like
You don't know what's going to happen with a team like this. I think realistically they are absolutely not a playoff team. But I think that's more just, like I said, the division. Like Lions, Bears, and Packers. Are you kidding me? That especially this year, that's not a fun division to be in. So at the end of the day, it's a tough road ahead for them, but I don't know. That's going to be a fun division to watch, though. We are now in the middle of the NFL offseason. We've been in the middle of the NFL offseason for a little bit here, but like anything else, we're talking about what people have to say, or just random comments that random players have come out and said. And strangely, after I think we did this segment 2 weeks ago now, maybe even 3, we talked about the NFL schedule. Andy Reid came out and talked about it recently and pretty much addressed something that I didn't even realize was the case until pretty much right now. And it was pretty surprising to me, to say the least. The Chiefs have to play on every single day of the week at least once this season. And I don't know if has that ever happened before? I guess that would have been something important, smart to look at before this. But it's definitely something I can't say I've heard of.
According to USA Today, the only other team in league history to match the feat was, this isn't a typo, the New York Yankees. Yes, this is in 1927 when the New York Yankees was a football team. Was the last time something like this happened. They played every day but Monday. The only other time it's happened.
Every day but Monday?
Yes. So
is there a day
Sunday,
that the
Tuesday,
Chiefs
Wednesday, Thursday? Yes, the Chiefs do not play on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Nobody plays.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
But
That's
the Chiefs will have yes, the Chiefs will have. Obviously, they'll play on Sunday. Obviously, they play on Monday Night Football. Those are very normal. Same with they get obviously they get the Thursday opener. Yeah, they get a Thursday opener. Obviously, as the defending Super Bowl champions, they get a Saturday game late in the season. Not that abnormal, right? That happens sometimes at the end of the season. Then the weird ones come with. They get the Amazon Prime Black Friday game against the Raiders. That one's a bit strange. And then the worst one of them all is when they have to play the Steelers on Wednesday because that Wednesday is Christmas.
Wow. So they're pretty much just given every holiday. Except, did you say Thanksgiving in there? They play on Thanksgiving?
No, I believe they do not have Thanksgiving.
Oh, darn.
Because the only Thursday night game they're listed for is the home opener.
Ah, well, there you go. Well, that's unfortunate. I think they really, really could have completed the entire... That would have been funny. Give the Chiefs both Christmas and Thanksgiving. That would have made my entire existence. Being able to enjoy the Chiefs with my entire family and watch them probably shit stomp the Raiders. It would have been great. Can't wait to watch that on Christmas. It's going to be terrific. Anyway,
Steelers on Christmas. Either way, same result.
Yeah. Well. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's still definitely something that's very, very interesting, and I think Andy Reid's comments on it definitely highlight that as well. It clearly that he very much came out and said, "Yeah, we don't care, buddy. We won the Super Bowl the last 2 years. It doesn't matter to us. We'll Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on the moon. We don't care. It doesn't matter where. Doesn't matter when. We'll play. We'll win." Is pretty much what he came out and said. And, I mean, I don't know what else I'd expect from him to say. It'd be weirder if he came out and just like, yeah, that's stupid. Why are we playing that much on such stupid days? We just want to play on Sunday. Like, I don't know. I don't know what else I'd expect. This kind of seems like a no-shit article to me. I don't know who actually asked him on that, but at least to me, I don't know what else I would expect him to say.
but it is kind of... Yeah, it is one of those answers, what else is he supposed to say? But it also is one of those answers where it's like, that's not what he actually thinks about this. That's what you have to say, because if you say, yeah, we're screwed because of the schedule, obviously that's not great optics for your team, right? But I think I know lots of players, and it's been a huge issue throughout the however long Thursday night football has been a thing, where
Yeah.
having these short rests and having these quick turnarounds is not ideal for players. Um, there's been studies done. Apparently, I'm pretty sure the NFL claims that there's no higher concurrence of injuries on Thursday night football. But just based on the eye test, it seems like there is.
Yeah.
You don't get the same week of practice, same week of preparation, same week of allowing your body to heal. And with the Chiefs, it's just going to be like they're all over the place. And I do think that is a little bit of a competitive disadvantage in terms of not
Yeah.
having the same amount, not having the same even consistency of preparation time. You're
That's what
never
I was
going to
gonna
be able
say,
to really
yeah.
get settled. And as much as that stuff is not like the Chiefs are still going to be good, and as inconsequential as some of that stuff seems, I think it does matter, and we've seen there's a reason teams win coming off of bye weeks. That stuff does matter, and I think just as a whole, it's a little bit indicative of the larger issue where I think now more than ever the NFL is prioritizing profit and big time TV windows over competitive balance. This is one of the least competitively balanced schedules we've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's just interesting. It's just very, very interesting because of course it happened to the Chiefs. Who else would it have happened to? And Mahomes was also quoted in here, even saying pretty much the same thing that you just said there, which was, "I feel like our schedule has gotten crazier every single year," and I mean it's clear that the fans aren't the only people noticing the fact that, like you pointed out there, it's less about safety these days and it's more about how much money can we make off our Amazon deal. It's
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, the NFL are going to do that. It's not very surprising. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it was that long ago that Goodell was talking about potentially adding another game, wasn't he? Like it's been a
Yep.
whole mix of things that honestly it's just it doesn't even surprise me anymore that stuff like this is continuing to happen. It's just what I think we should have all grown to expect out of the NFL at this point. That safety, very clearly at the very least, isn't as important as the bottom line, which I imagine is the case for most most leagues. It's probably just more noticeable in the NFL.
Well, it is different in the NFL because I think the NFL has more contact than any other sport. Like it needs to be more of a recovery period than any other sport. Because like I mean, looking at like at least any other major sport, because you look at like hockey, at
Yeah,
least in hockey you're generally taking shifts. You're not taking hits on every single shift you're
I
out there.
and that's what I was gonna
Whereas
say too. Because immediately when you said that, my immediate reaction was, I don't know about that. But something that a lot of players learn very early on is how to avoid hits and how to properly take hits so that you basically don't feel it as long as the person on the other side of it isn't Dustin Bufflin. It's, I mean, yeah, I do agree with you. NFL is probably the most physically, and we see that even in injuries. I mean, I think the NFL probably has the most injuries without a doubt. I don't think that's a controversial
oh yeah,
statement. Like it's
no, not at all.
yeah, that or no, it's probably the NFL.
Yeah. Just look at even like the amount of quarterbacks we saw get injured last year.
True. Yeah.
Like, and compare that just to the amount of like star centers in the NHL. Like, nowhere near the occurrence of injuries, despite the fact that the NFL plays about an eighth of the games, or I guess not an eighth, like a whatever it is, like a quarter of the games,
Yeah. Don't ask me
because
to
they're
do
almost up to 20.
math.
Yeah, a little bit less than a quarter of
Yeah.
the NHL schedule, but like that's insane. Um, And yeah, I think for all the efforts to try to improve player safety, it kind of proves the NFL a bit hypocritical when they throw schedules like this. I kind of want to throw another schedule out there for you, Simon, in terms of one that's impacted by a similar kind of mindset. That's the New York Jets. We
Oh.
saw this last year when Aaron Rodgers came into town and they put the Jets on primetime every week. And then we had to watch Zach Wilson in primetime for about 3 months. Um, and poor kid got eaten alive. And so there was a quote that came out. I don't even need to look it up because I remember what it was. I believe it's Mike North is the name, NFL head schedule maker, where he said basically, yeah, we put the Jets in primetime a whole bunch again because they kind of owe us. And I, for one, think that's a bit of a stupid sentiment. Like, yes, I
think that's
understand you
funny.
have regrets, but like running it back is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Not only did they run it back, but they put them in primetime even harder than they did last
Hell
year.
yeah.
So
Caleb,
I'm
you
just
know
gonna
what? You know
take
what
this out.
happens when you miss in roulettes? You
Every
spin
gambler
the wheel
stops
again.
before his big win. Every gambler stops before the big win, right, Simon? Strict Play Gambling Podcast.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
So
Just remember, hey, if you do, everybody knows, and this is gambling advice with Simon, the man who does not gamble. Everybody knows that if you play roulette twice, you have a 100% chance to win, because it's 50% plus 50%. That's 100%. Exactly. It's just how it works.
That is 100%, Simon. That's
so therefore, the Jets will. I mean, it'll just work out. Like, there's no chance that a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers will ever like fall down the stairs just because he's an old grandpa. It's not
coming off an Achilles injury. There's no way that he gets.
No, it won't happen at all.
So yes, based on that logic, because 50 plus 50 is 100, you say put the Jets in primetime 7 out of the first 11 weeks of the NFL season.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Including not once but twice having a Sunday game and then a Thursday night game. So short weeks, twice in that stretch.
Hope
that
your
I want
Achilles
to kind of quote.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're just gonna put them out to dry here. I think this was kind of brought up to me listening to the MMQB podcast with Connor Orr. He has an article here that was talking about it. I think this kind of sums it up well. He said, if this schedule was purely the creation of the NFL, the Jets should refuse to take the field until the league rips this up and starts all over. It's getting that bad. It's getting that bad.
And it just doesn't make sense, especially if you're talking about doing it based on, like, how good the team did the year before. The Jets were not good.
Yes.
Like, you're completely basing it off the fact that Aaron Rodgers... Well, I won't even finish the sentence there. You're basing it off of Aaron Rodgers. Well, I mean, it's going to be interesting. That is definitely for sure. I think the one difference this year is they did draft a young quarterback behind Rodgers. I believe they drafted... Who did they draft
Jordan
again?
Travis.
That's right. Yes, they did
Jordan
draft
Travis.
Yeah.
Who may or may not have also recently gotten injured. Who also may not have a brutal long-term injury.
I thought you were talking about like this offseason, but yeah.
No. It's not like.
So what you're saying, Caleb, is your prediction just to like to say exactly what the entire comment section is thinking. You're saying on the first 2 drives of the Jets season, Aaron Rodgers is going to go down, and then Jordan Travis is going to go down the exact same way?
No, because Jordan Travis isn't their backup quarterback.
Oh,
they have Who
do they have in the middle?
They have the foolproof, injury-proof. Definitely never had injury problems. Definitely never had the whole punctured lung thing or any other million injuries that this guy's had. Tyrod Taylor.
It's like they're asking for it.
Yeah.
It's like they're asking for it. Like, oh, buddy. Like, just want
to say it before the comments get at me. Obviously, the punctured lung thing wasn't his fault, but point being, he's kind of injury prone.
Well, not even kind of. I feel like he's like I can't think of a team he's been on in the last little bit that he didn't get hurt. Like and obviously it's not his fault. Like it's not like we're beating down. Yeah, exactly. He's not young. It's not like we're trying to beat down on a guy for getting hurt, but it's just we're pointing out something that I think is an important conversation to have around the Jets, just in the fact that they clearly didn't really learn their lesson. I feel like when you watch Aaron Rodgers go down like that, I feel like the first thing you got to think is, shit, let's bring in a guy that we know is going to be able to stick around the whole year, just in case.
Yeah. And to be fair to them, Tyrod Taylor is a good backup when he plays. But yeah, they don't exactly have. So I do think they addressed it better than they did last year.
No, I mean that's a low bar. Yeah, that is a low bar. That's true. But it's still the type of thing where, God, just like I don't even know. You could have brought in almost. I feel bad because I do like Tyrod Taylor. I like watching him play football, but you could have brought in another backup quarterback, pretty much any backup quarterback that is on the same level as Tyrod Taylor, and you would have been probably better off just based on the injury history. Like, I think I would have rather have a slightly worse quarterback who's not injury prone. Like, I feel like that's the safer choice, at least to me. But who knows? Maybe it means Jordan Travis ends up starting the year in his first rookie season, which would be kind of funny.
Who knows? Who knows? I think that even if you look at the Jets and think, wow, they should have gotten somebody a little bit better, I think they probably weren't thinking they weren't going to have to face this kind of gauntlet right away. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean I would have done it either way. Like I think it would have been. It's an important conversation to have whether you have the easiest or hardest schedule in the NFL, right? Because I mean, especially after your quarterback goes down, I think on the first drive, right? Like it's absolutely just something you have to think about. It happens in any sport, right? It doesn't even have to mean quarterback. Like if your best middle linebacker went down on the first snap and was out for the rest of the season, are you telling me you wouldn't be spending the offseason looking for a good backup middle linebacker just in case? Like it's that type of thing, right? Where you just want to be safe, and it doesn't feel like this is being safe. Sure, you have a good backup quarterback now, but that you don't know what's going to happen with that backup quarterback. Like he could, if he ends up hurt, then you're stuck with a rookie quarterback who a lot of people have already labeled more of like a what even is the word? I'm blanking off the top of my head.
Project.
There you go. Like a project quarterback, like as your starter, which is not what you want. And maybe that's why they're willing to be more risky. Maybe it's because they're more.
I mean, he is their third string quarterback. Like it would take absurd bad luck to get to that point.
Yes, but are you saying it's impossible?
I'm not necessarily saying it's impossible. Like with the schedule that they have.
Exactly, and that's why it's a tough situation to be in. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's not entirely their fault because it's not like they make the schedule. But
still. Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's where I differ from you is that I think the Jets being schedule agnostic had a decent plan in terms of drafting a quarterback and bringing in an experienced veteran behind Aaron Rodgers. I think their plan is a lot better than what they did last year.
No, it definitely is.
More than anything, they got screwed by the schedule, and I think that happened to a whole bunch of teams. Just to kind of wrap up the schedule thing, I think it also another one that kind of pops up to the top of my head is the Steelers. They got screwed because I think they play a whole bunch of their divisional games. Like they play like 90%. This is like kind of just riffing on what the exact stats is, but it's like 90% of their divisional games in the last like 6 weeks of the season or whatever, where it's like all divisional games packed in at the end. I think it's just kind of concerning to me how much more the NFL is favoring TV money over competitive balance, and I hope it doesn't have to start impacting the NFL in a way where we're starting to see teams drop off in quality just because they were kind of shoved into a matchup where in previous years there wouldn't have even been a game.
And if we want to talk about the money side as well, we can quickly touch on the other headline that we came into the segment with, which is the fact that NFL fans in the U.S. will now have to pay $1,600 a year to watch every game after the Netflix edition, which is the most crazy thing ever. That has to be like, I mean, it's as somebody who enjoys myself some MMA and boxing, it's not something that's unknown. Like, especially like any fellow UFC fans out there will probably could tell you how much it costs to watch the UFC, and it's probably a similar number. But the reason it's a similar number is because you have to pay $100 a month on like the pay-per-view, right? Like that's why it costs that much. So it's the fact that this is happening with the NFL is crazy to me. Like at least for the big four sports, I've kind of always known it to be you can just flip on a channel and it's there type thing, right? As long as you have the sports channels. That's how it has been for a long time, and all of a sudden, if you want to watch this, you have to have this channel, and if you want to watch this game, you need to have Amazon, and if you want to watch this, you need to have this thing. If you want to watch that, you gotta. It's just getting legitimately bonkers. It's like they're trying to lean into the whole sort of like it's basically pay-per-view at this point. It is pay-per-view. Like
Well, it's just the proliferation of streaming, right?
Yeah.
It's Amazon, it's your Peacocks, it's I'm sure it's not because the underlying thing in all of this is that cable is dying, and a lot of people don't have cable anymore because other than sports, what do you have cable for? The news. My list ends
No.
there. Like I know. I mean, I still like just because I live with my parents and my dad watches a lot of hockey and football and sports. We have cable, but
We actually
like
don't have
if
cable. Like that's the because
exactly,
we
yeah,
we technically have like I won't explain it because I think it'll I don't even know how to explain it, but we have it's cable without cable. It's weird. Don't worry about it. It's funky.
yeah.
Tell us.
But like that, I think that's becoming more and more common, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's why the transition to streaming services is happening. I am just kind of, I think, upset that like, I mean, we have DAZN here in Canada. I think there's a similar thing that the NFL runs in the States. It's nice to be able to have all like I always just wish that there's like one platform that I can kind of pay a set fee and watch all my NFL games. I get that in DAZN. I think people in the States have a little bit rougher because where they have to go on Amazon Prime or they have to go on Peacock because it's not the same licensing deal in Canada, we get it all in the same place. So I think A, it makes me grateful to be Canadian, but I mean also just like B, looking at that structure and going kind of like, yeah, this is problematic. Like having to
Yeah.
pay this much to multiple different kind of vendors to have an Amazon Prime subscription just to watch Thursday Night Football feels just like the greed of these companies is just kind of
Well, I mean,
skyrocketing.
with that kind of like, if I don't even know. The conversation has been brought up a lot, and I'm gonna take it here because I think it's an important question to ask, especially with the price being this high. And this has come into the headlines, especially in the boxing world. I think it was with the oh god, I just called my I'm not a full on boxing fan. I'm an MMA guy, but the Fury, I think is it Usyk?
Usyk?
Usyk. I think it's Usyk. I don't know
Yeah.
his name. I don't know him as well. But like with that fight, I remember there was a they actually released the number of how much they lost based on pirating, like people pirating the fight, and they lost I think over $100 million, like in sales because people were just pirating it. And I think that's got to be a conversation now with the fact that like I almost feel I'm gonna just come out right and say it. I feel like the NFL is almost asking for it when they're asking for 1,600 to watch every game. Are you kidding me? Like how many
Yeah.
people can actually who's going to do that? Like it is absolutely bonkers to me. And that's not me encouraging it. I want to make that clear. That's not me encouraging it because I don't want to go to jail. All I am saying
An inevitability.
it
An
is exactly.
inevitability.
Yes. Yeah. Like
Inevitability.
it's the type of thing where it's just like if you're gonna ask for that much money and there is another way around it that most fans probably don't want to take that route, but I'm sure there's a lot of fans in the States who are looking at that price tag and going, I don't have another choice. Like if I want to watch the NFL, I this is the world I live in now. Right? And that's the crappy thing is it's almost becoming it's becoming you have to be rich to watch the NFL. It is no longer it is no longer the sport for all Americans, right?
What a
Exactly.
dystopian capitalist hellhole we live in, hey?
I know, right?
That's
Like
a that's a
it's
that's a fun optimistic way to end the segment, eh?
oh yeah, terrific.
Now, other than the ongoing NHL playoffs, we've got Dallas and Edmonton playing right now as of recording. We've got the Rangers Panthers series all tied up at 2. The other big NHL news is with one of the teams that is not in the playoffs, and that is the new NHL team in Utah. Now, what's the guy's name? Ryan Smith. He recently went on, I believe, the Pat McAfee show.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, to kind of say there was a list of 20 that I believe he put out on Twitter/X to say, here are our 20 finalists. Fans vote on the name. And he said that they're down to 4 finalists. We didn't get all 4, but we learned that two of them were Mammoth, the Utah Mammoth, and the Utah Yeti.
I like Yeti.
And yeah, I'll throw it over to you. What do you think are those two names? And if you have the list of 20 in front of you, what are you kind of hoping the other two on that list will be?
Oh, like I said, I like Yetis. Utah Yetis has a nice ring to it. I think that'd be a good one. Mammoths feels kind of, I don't know. What about Utah screams Mammoths to you? Because I can't really think of much.
Like
it's, I guess,
Ice Age.
I guess Utah was around in the Ice Age, ladies and gentlemen. Like I don't know. It's that one's a little weaker to me. I mean, then again, how many Yetis can you count in Utah at the same time? So it's kind of a
yeah.
I just like Yetis because it has a nice. It rolls off the tongue. That'd be a fun one.
Utah Yeti.
Yeah, Utah Yetis. But as for the other two, I don't even know. Like it feels like there's absolutely like there's a few in here that there's no way in hell are going to be the last two. Like I pointed out to you, Powder. NHL does not want that. Bettman is like immediately he heard that. He saw that was on the survey and he went knocking on Ryan Smith's door and went, no, we ain't going down that road. Immediately Kuznetsov requests a trade to Utah. The whole NHL just lights on fire. It would have been a shit show. So that no way in hell that's in the final two.
For all the kids watching, it's because Gary Bettman doesn't like snow. That's why.
Exactly.
That's why
Gary Bettman because he doesn't like Canada. So we're just kind of connecting the dots there. Nothing to do with cocaine. Yeah. Nothing to do with cocaine. It's snow.
What's cocaine?
What's cocaine? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, the other one I pointed out to you was squall because I didn't even know what that meant off the top of my head. I'm actually, Caleb, I will say I'm impressed that you do that off the top of your head. That is some impressive grammar work
this
right there.
This is what a media studies degree gets you, knowing what squall means.
Well, there you go. There you go.
It's good in conversations about NHL Utah, the New York Times crossword, and not much else.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, those are the two that I think instantly, hell no. The rest of them are like, I don't know. I don't hate, like, I think Caribou's kind of cool. Like, that's the one that sticks out to me that I would have never thought of. I could think of, like, you could kind of, I mean, then again, when I think, it is boring. It is absolutely boring. But when I think of, like, you could make a cool logo off that a little bit, I think. You can make a cool logo off that. I think, I don't even know. I think all of them kind of suck except Yetis. I think Utah Yetis is going to be the instant winner. That's my prediction. I mean,
yeah.
Does
it feel like as much of a home run as Seattle Kraken was?
No,
because that was a home run from before that was.
I remember naming my like NHL like 19 team the Seattle Kraken before that was ever. I think it was I don't remember anymore. Whatever year before the year they came into the league, but like I think we all knew it was going to be Kraken way before it was announced. So that at least to me that one shouldn't have been shocking. But for this one, absolutely, it's a bit tougher because. Yeah, there's not really anything that necessarily sticks out. Do you got a favorite out of the? I'm assuming you have the list as well, but.
Yep. I don't know if I have a favorite. I have an immediate least favorite.
Yeah.
My immediate least favorite is the Utah HC. This ain't fucking soccer. Like, come on, get out of here with this garbage. Like, we're not calling our team.
I think they're
Utah
assuming.
Hockey Club.
Yeah, I was about to say. I think they're assuming they're going to do a Washington football club thing for a little bit there, or football team.
Well, that's like but that's like one of the final names. That's like one of the names on the survey.
I guess.
Like,
yeah.
Like, I think they were genuinely considering it as one of the top 20 names. Just to,
this ain't soccer. Go back to Europe, asshole.
Yeah, but that's what so many teams I mean, obviously soccer, but just like I'm thinking MLS, like
yeah
FC Dallas, FC Salt Lake, so many.
Yeah.
That's just don't bring that garbage to hockey. What kind of logo are you gonna make out of that? I've never liked that. Like, this isn't just me not liking soccer. I just don't. Like, I think some soccer names and logos
lazy?
Are so cool. I just think it's lazy. Like, even in soccer, like there's some fantastic Again, I'll think of the MLS because that's just what I know off the top of my head. But like Vancouver Whitecaps, Cool name, cool logo. Seattle Sounders, cool name, cool logo. That kind of thing, right? But like Toronto FC, okay, buddy. Like, calm down. Like, yeah. I don't like it at all. That would be my least favorite. I mean, if
I
I
don't
have
think
to
that's
go in
gonna
favor,
happen.
like I'm,
Just to be clear, I don't. I think that is
I
the
don't
least
think,
likely answer out of other than Powder. Powder might be below
yeah,
that.
I don't think so either. It depends how pretentious Ryan Smith is.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But
if he just wants to be the first person to do it,
yeah, no, I don't
come
like it
to
at
our
all.
prestigious
I don't
club.
I don't think so too. I do think it's more of like because soccer has more of a tradition behind it, and I think that's what it's
Yes,
based
no, and
in.
that is kind of the thing with soccer, right? It would be very weird to bring it to hockey, or really anything really. Like the only I brought up the Washington football team because that was happening because they needed an immediate change. Like there was
they did a little racism for
yeah
50 years.
Oopsie doopsie we did a racism. Yeah, that was that. Yeah, it was a fun Jesus, it was a fun situation for them. But anyway, that's not exactly the case here for Utah.
No.
I'm a little surprised actually. Actually, I'm not. I just thought about it. That would have been a very stupid thing to say considering there is still conversation about the Coyotes coming back. I don't necessarily hate the Utah Coyotes. I think that would have been the laziest thing they could have done. But
I hate it just because of the laziness.
yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't.
Right?
And
Like
it
I
doesn't
think
really fit. Like
half the fun is the fact that they're going to be we're getting a new team, right? Like that's the fun of it, right? Which if you're just gonna rebrand the Coyotes to Utah, it's like it's lazy.
Yeah, because it is technically an expansion team. This Utah team, right?
Technically.
Because I don't know if we talked about this the last time we talked about NHL Utah, but basically how it works is the NHL folded the Coyotes, so the Coyotes just folded. Then they brought in Utah as an expansion team, and it just traded basically everything that the Coyotes had to Utah. Yeah. So basically, it is a relocation, but not in the NHL's eyes, and that way they can keep the Coyotes alive somehow, and say there's potential to bring them back as an expansion team in the near future.
If I were to guess, just to throw something out there, it probably has something to do with like the legal side of things as well. Just the fact that it's not like the Coyotes owner was all too happy with that entire situation and how it went down. Because I think that was the whole conversation when that was all happening, right? Is the fact that how are they going to do this in a way that allows the Coyotes to potentially come back? Because I think that was part of the deal. Was that oh God, it's already been long enough that I've forgotten the Coyotes owner's name. But like Morello,
Alex Marullo.
Marullo, that's
Alex
what it was.
Marullo.
Yeah, like there was conversations about basically him having 5 years to bring back the Coyotes, and how he still technically owns the branding of Arizona Coyotes. Like he still owns the team that doesn't exist currently. Basically, like it's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's weird going into that entire thing without having it in front of me because I'm just going off of my memory of at this point a month or two ago. But nonetheless, it's definitely an interesting situation. I'm excited for it. I think it's from what we've seen, it seems like Utah is pretty excited to get a team. I think I'm really excited to see what comes out of it. I think this is exactly what a team like Arizona needed because they had a lot of good young players. They have a lot of the right pieces already. I think they have a pretty high pick this year in the draft. I don't remember where they have it, but they do. They definitely have it in the top 10 because they did not have a good season, I don't think. Like it's the type of thing where a lot of things are leaning their way, and if they weren't the Arizona Coyotes, I feel like I'd be liking them going into this season to at least surprise a few people. Which now that they're not, let's see what happens, right? Like you have that weight off your back. You are an expansion team. The expectation is that you're going to suck. Go prove them wrong, right? Like that is all that's there. You are no longer the terrible worst franchise in the NHL, Arizona Coyotes. You are not the basement dwellers. You are not the owner of the key to the basement. You are now the Utah Yetis or whatever the hell they end up deciding. Based on this list, I am praying Yetis. I think Yetis is like far.
I think
Did you say what
the
your
other
favorite
one
was?
I
I don't
think
think you did.
the other one I'd say would be Blizzard. I kind of like Blizzard. Honestly, it's kind of basic, but it's
I
like
was gonna say.
I don't know.
I
It's
would
not
give
bad.
your criticism of Caribou right back to Blizzard.
I think Caribou is a lot less exciting than Blizzard is.
But you can
I think you
I
can do a lot.
you
I
can
think you
make
can do a
such a
lot
cool
with
logo
Blizzard in
with
terms of
Yetis
planning.
though. Like what I
Yeah,
think of is like
I'm not saying Yetis is bad. Like I think it
no,
would also
absolutely.
be up there for me, but I think Black Diamonds is another one that's just more interesting than anything. I think you can make it could be interesting. Um, depends if they went clean with it or cheesy with it. Um, yeah, I do think a lot of these are just synonyms for cold,
Yes.
so you can mix and match a lot of those. There's not a lot of unique names on here because you do kind of look at blizzards, freeze, frost, glaciers, ice,
Yeah.
powder, squall, all synonyms for cold generally. I don't know. You can definitely level the criticism that those are not the most exciting. Um, I do think you're right that it's probably going to be Yeti. I think
Yeah.
even though I do kind of like Blizzard. I don't know if it's the double Z in there that just gets me a little bit little excited, a little bit pizzazzed if you catch my drift. I do think Yeti. I would be like Yetis would definitely be up there for me too.
I don't think Blizzard's low down my list. Like I if that ended up being the thing that they went with, I won't sit here and go, "Wow, that sucks." But I will say I don't like it as much. I do think it's a bit more basic. I'm trying to like pick
Yeah.
out another one on this list that I think is good. I mean, I if they do ice, I think that's dumb. No hockey team should be called the Ice. Like
Yeah.
that's like, yeah, guys, welcome the next expansion team, the Quebec City Pucks. It's just like
Yeah.
it's just lame. Uh, Other than that, though, like most of these are, like you pointed out, they're just synonyms of cold. So, like, there's not a lot on here that will be terrible.
Yeah.
I like freeze. That's okay. Utah freeze. There you go. That's okay. Most of these are, I don't know. It's kind of hard to
Pretty
name a team
basic.
from you. Not to throw like shade at Utah, but it's kind of hard to name a team
U-
from Utah. As someone who has
Utah
never
Stormy
been,
Mormons.
yeah, as someone who has never been to Utah in my life, I cannot name a single thing about Utah. Which, I mean, then again, I just said I wouldn't throw shade at them, but I absolutely did. So I'm sorry, Utah. But then again, I challenge all of you Utahians in the comments to name one thing about Calgary, and that's my challenge right back at you. It's a two-way road, champ.
I don't think we're actually that much dissimilar from Utah.
Probably not.
Um,
No, that wouldn't surprise me. Calgary's pretty boring.
yeah. Mountains. We got mountains.
That's
Utah's
true.
got mountains.
That's true. That's true. We probably have Mormons somewhere.
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 I don't know. I don't know if we have them quite as much as Utah does, but
Probably. Well, I can't say that I go around the streets of Calgary counting the Mormons. So yeah, no, I'll just agree with you on
yeah.
that one.
I think one last thing about the names to kind of I think this is my sleeper pick to
Okay.
be the choice, and I wouldn't hate it, because again a lot of these are um, synonyms for cold, like we saw, or just something to do with like the mountains in Utah, or like the Ice Age, all that kind of stuff. There's only a few that are kind of outside of this like winter realm. I don't have the list up in front of me anymore, but it's kind of like you're looking at maybe caribou, maybe like canyons. I think was another
Yeah.
one. Um, but the one that I think is kind of interesting is the Utah Hive,
Yeah.
and I think
I
that's
was
a
gonna
little bit
say it's like
underrated.
the what are they like oh the Beehive State? No. What's the
Yes,
thing?
they are the Beehive
Is it the
State.
Beehive State?
Yes,
I
yes,
knew it was
they are the
something like
Beehive
that. Yeah.
State. Um, and if you look at their, I mean, if you look at their new state flag, What does it have in the center of it? But
It's a bee.
a
Probably
giant
not,
beehive. I'm gonna hold it up if I can.
I was
figure
about to
out
say
how
I'll throw it on the screen here, but
Oh yeah, you can throw it on the screen. It's a lot better than me going like this. But
oh, that's a nice flag. I will
it's
say
a very nice
I
flag.
will say as somebody who I won't call myself a flag expert, but you know what? That's a very nice flag. It's a very
It's a nice
respectable
looking flag.
Look at that flag.
I think if they went to honor their place as the Beehive State, and it's on their flag, so it's
Alright.
obviously a big part of state identity. If you want to honor that sick new flag, I think Hive would be a cool name to go. I don't know if it
Yeah.
would be the most popular choice, just because it
No.
kind of isn't the most obvious connection. But I think that's kind of like my sleeper pick. That's my sleeper pick.
Yeah, I like the logo. I like the name, like Utah Hive. But my issue with that is like I I can't imagine a team pulling off yellow that isn't the Bruins. Like it works for the Bruins, you know what I mean? Like that
What
black
about
and
the
yellow.
Preds?
Even that isn't pretty. Like it's I don't know. I don't like yellow very much in like team jerseys. Like it's just I don't know. It would depend on how they do it.
I think
yeah.
you gotta have a good jersey designer, but you just gotta figure out a way to do it without making it tacky.
Yeah, well that's the issue, right? If you're going like a like bright bee yellow, because when I think bees, I think bright yellow. You know what I mean? You're not going gold, you're going bright yellow, right? Like if you're gonna do that, you gotta commit. And if you're gonna do that, you're gonna have ugly ass jerseys, bright yellow.
Well, you can make
shoot me.
the jerseys black and the logo yellow
Yeah, you could
and
do
the
that.
accents
I guess.
yellow.
Yeah.
I think there's
yeah.
a way to make it.
Well,
green.
even if I'm gonna throw this back on the screen here, you can't see my mouse, so actually there's no point in me like trying to point it out. But like, go for like that dark blue and yellow. I'd be down for that.
Yeah,
That'd be
exactly.
cool. That'd
There's
be
ways
good.
to make it work.
Yeah,
There's
I
ways
just
to-
mean
there's ways
like
to make it work.
if you're gonna commit to going like I'm throwing Barry B Benson on the crest, bright yellow jerseys, I am out immediately. Like you have to do it right. I don't think there's a lot of like jerseys that you could mess up. I think you could absolutely like Yetis. No way you're messing that up. That is so easy.
Yeah,
Throw a big ol' Yeti on the front and just like have fun. Like they're if they make fun jerseys with that, those will probably be my favorite jerseys in the league. Because you can make some goofy ass jerseys with that, and it'd be awesome.
yeah.
Beehive, you could mess up. You could absolutely mess the hive up. So
But you could also make it very cool. I think.
you could, yeah. I actually now I'm kind of seeing your side now that I'm looking at like the crest again, like the dark blue and the yellow. I see what you mean. You could do something with those colors. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Utah Hive coming 2025.
Ooh.
It even rhymes.
Ooh. Well, Caleb, you just got hired to do the entire announcement.
This is why I got a job in marketing. Like drop the mic on that sucker.
Oh yeah. In some recent news going around the NHL world, we're going to stick around right here and talk about a comment that Chris Knobloch made after, I believe it was Game 2? Yes, Game 2. It was Game 2 that he came out and said this. And he decided, in his infinite wisdom, to talk about something. It's a big controversy in the NHL. So I know a lot of like big people who aren't super into the NHL might not know this. You might not know this unless you're like an insider. This is some insider knowledge from Knobloch right here. And he said, and this surprised me. This surprised me a lot, and I need to emphasize that. The standards get changed for penalty calls in the playoffs. I don't know if you knew that, Caleb. I don't know if you knew. It's crazy. He like basically came out and said that the playoffs are different and that the playoffs are more physical and it's harder to draw penalties. And he basically came out, and I'm immediately like crapping on the Oilers here. Oilers fans are gonna hate me in this segment, but like to quote exactly what he said, the standards get changed a little bit. He said after Saturday's 3-1 loss, the NHL would definitely want to make sure it's a penalty when it's in the regular season. Maybe some things get let go. That's obviously unfortunate for us. We've got a very good power play, and we win a lot of games on the power play. It's almost like that's how
He's not subtle.
He's not subtle.
In terms of why he's saying that.
No, yeah, like it's pretty. I said this. I'm gonna immediately repeat what I said to you before the podcast, before we started the segment, which is just, God, that's a boneheaded thing to say. I mean, it's not like that's gonna change. there is not going to be any outcome to you coming out and saying this. That's more the thing that pisses me off about it. It's just straight up stupid. We all know you have a good power play. You're telling us two things we know, and you're asking for a change that is never going to happen.
And what kind of sympathy are you asking for here?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't think your comments are going to get any sympathy from any NHL fan. Even some Oilers fans, I'm sure, the more self-aware ones will go like, okay, like, yeah, I'd like to call more penalties too, but like,
yeah, no, I actually love more power plays. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like the Flames to draw more power plays, frankly, like, or draw more penalties.
Of course, the guy with the best power play in the NHL and one of the better penalty kills in the NHL wants more penalties. Wow, shocker right there. Ain't how the world works, bud.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of. I think I'll take this a couple different ways. I think his comments get even kind of dumber if you look at the second half of this quote that he says. So he said, "It's unfortunate for us that it's tougher to draw penalties in the playoffs than it is in the regular season. That being said, I think the standard is the same for both teams. I'm not saying it's unfair to us, but we would like the same standard." So, like, what are you, like, the thing you're complaining about just gets even dumber then. Because I understand coming out and saying...
You're asking for NHL-wide change to a system that has been known... You have had your entire life of coaching to prepare for the fact that there will be less penalties in the playoffs. I could have told you before the playoffs that would be an issue. Like, that, and this shouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, exactly. I get it to the point where it's like, I get complaining about refereeing you think is unfair. If you think the calls are going one way and you think you're kind of getting screwed over, I understand complaining about that. But what's the point of, like, it just feels so weak to me to go up and be like, yeah, I feel like it was a pretty evenly refereed game, but I'm still going to complain about it.
Yeah, it was pretty even, but give me more power plays, please.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, I think the one thing maybe you can say is, like, I guess it is frustrating if you see some things that you think should be called and they're not. Like, where do you draw the line in terms of what's a penalty and what's not? But yeah, I don't know. Like I think you just have to know that they're gonna let some things go.
Yeah, and just to add on to this, this isn't what he talked about, but this is something I was quickly just reading the article that I pulled up in front of me that has the quotes, and something that they did point out is the discrepancies that they have sort of already had. I guess this doesn't have Game 3 in front of me, actually. So I can't tell you what they had in Game 3, but so far the power plays in their series against Dallas, in Game 1, the Stars had 5-man advantages compared to the Oilers 1. If he was going to complain after Game 1, sure, right? Like, then we're like, okay, now you got something to complain about. But Game 2, the Oilers recorded 2 power plays to Dallas's 1. They had more power plays in this game. That's the funny thing. Like, it's not even like he's trying to say this after a game that they lost because they had less power plays. You had more power plays than Dallas. You're basically saying, well, okay, no, you're not saying this, but it's the equivalent of almost saying, like, you need that power play to win. Because if you're not winning if you're not winning 5-on-5 to Dallas and you're asking for more power plays, your argument isn't very sound. Like, that's not a very good argument. I don't know. At least to me, I look at it like that. If, like, make that comment after Game 1. Make that comment after Game 1 of the playoffs. Because that would have been your first time in the NHL seeing an NHL playoffs going, they call less penalties here. And you could have, like, played off the "I'm the new coach" type thing.
He has done 2 rounds of this, so it wouldn't be his first time.
Exactly. Well, no. Wait, when was he hired? Isn't this his first year? Am I out of it?
Yeah. But I mean, like, saying this at Game 1 of the conference finals.
I meant when I said that, I meant Game 1 of the playoffs.
Oh, yes. Not Game 1 of the series. I get you.
Yeah, no, but like either way, either would have been better. Like this is like the worst time to say that. Is more the point I'm trying to make. It's just it's a terrible thing to say as a whole because you're just gonna look like an idiot. Like it's just as a whole, it's I don't know what else you expected. Like of course you're going to have less penalty calls in the playoffs. That's the playoffs.
Yeah,
If you took that away,
and
there'd be more people mad than happy.
And I mean, what does it even do for you? Because yes, the Oilers' power play is fantastic, and maybe it leads to you getting an extra goal over them. But you're also, by saying this, you're also admitting that that the Stars should have had more penalties called on the Oilers too, right? Because
Well,
if you
yeah,
think it's
that's
even, and you
exactly
think
what
there
he
hasn't
said.
been, yeah. So like, who's to say that the Stars don't get it? Because even though the Oilers' power play is fantastic, maybe the Stars are the ones who the Stars are no slouch either. They've got fantastic talent on that team. I don't know. I think it's just such an interesting point. Like the Stars, I don't know how many of these were empty net, but the Stars did win by 2. It would take a lot in terms of penalties to or unless it's an empty net.
And
I
just to
assume
like
it
throw
is
out,
probably an empty net, but
just to throw out one more
still,
quote that Matthias Ekholm came out and said, I think after game 2 as well, I'm guessing, just related to the play that he's sort of seen out there is he looked at Darnell Nurse's penalty that happened for him, and then 5 minutes later he gets cross-checked in the same spot in the paint, nothing happens. And then he just said, it's hard, it's physical, it's playoff hockey out there. It just seems like we need to kill more than we get power plays, which is kind of the opposite of what Knobloch came out and said right off the jump. Is just in the fact, yeah, it's been even. Now you have Ekholm coming out, nah, it's not really been even. It's as a whole, it just seems like Edmonton's just trying to find something to blame, is what it looks like.
yeah, exactly.
You're losing
Exactly.
to a
I
team
think
that
it's a
is
team that
you're losing to a team that's just better than you at 5-on-5, and you're trying to look for an excuse and you're not finding it. Is what it sounds like.
yeah. Yeah, and I think, I was gonna say, I think that, I think not to Noble's credit, I think he's more right than Ekholm because I'm sure.
Yes, no, I agree.
I'm
with
sure
you.
if you go to anybody on the Stars and ask them, they'll probably have a similar story where they're like, oh, our guy got a penalty here, and then the same thing happened to me, and
no,
right?
Wow.
I think that
happens.
thing, not just in the playoffs, I think that thing happens in any game, and I think it's dumb to
Yeah.
complain about. Just out of curiosity, going to the game now, as of right now, I'm sure that the Oilers will probably win Game 4. As of now, there are 6 minutes left,
4-2. Yeah.
and they're up 4-2. Ironically enough, one of their goals came shorthanded, so okay, they're not blocked.
Well, and the funny thing about that entire thing as well, like I pointed out, they have a 92.7 penalty kill percentage on the playoffs as well to show exactly why they would want more power penalties going either way, because at the end of the day, you're putting out your power play that scores like almost I think 35% of the time, and you're going to be using your penalty kill if you get any penalties. That stops 92% of that. Math ain't map. Jesus Christ, I'm tripping all over the place. Math ain't mathin'. Holy.
And another thing that I think is ironic, and I'm just going through to confirm this for myself. Let me just look at one more game here, which I think makes these comments kind of even dumber. Edmonton, in the last, I haven't looked at game 1 yet, but in games 2, 3, 4, no power play goals. No power play goals this entire season. Or this entire series.
It's entire season.
No. They've had a couple this season. No, but this series they haven't had any. So
Yeah.
at this point, like, yeah, should they be calling more penalties, Chris Knobloch? Maybe, but maybe you should do something with the power plays you're given, because they haven't had a ton, but they haven't taken advantage of them. So
Yeah, there you go. Like
it's just a stupid comment to make from a coach in a losing effort.
No.
And I think if you're obviously he's a young coach, but I think in the future you just kind of have to look at it and say, like, place the blame on the game, on yourself or your team to say here's where we can improve. Because I think a coach reaching out and blaming the refs for something that's just a standard, like you said, like it's a standard for a reason. Like there's it's just the culture to officiate less in the playoffs.
And at the end
Blaming
of the day,
that just makes you look like a weak coach.
at the end of the day, it's usually the team with the best 5-on-5 that wins, and at least that's what we're sort of seeing. Not today, but I think it's 2-2 actually. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but at the I think
it will be 2-2 after this game.
yeah. I think what we're sort of seeing is just a coach run into a brick wall against a team that he knows they can't beat necessarily 5-on-5 in Dallas, which was something that I think anybody looking at that matchup would have told you. I would have told you that before the series. Dallas is better 5-on-5, but if they start taking penalties, the Oilers absolutely have a real shot to upset them. Like it's that type of thing, right? No matter how good Dallas is, the Oilers' power play is probably, like I said, I already made this take once earlier on the podcast, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. This Oilers power play might be the best power play we've ever seen. And I think Dallas knows that. Maybe the reason you're not getting a lot of penalties is because Dallas don't want to be in the box. Like, maybe that's it a little bit as well. Like, Dallas is maybe playing it a little bit on the safer side, even if it is playoff hockey, right? Like, there could be a lot of factors going on there. And I don't know. There's a lot of ways to play physically without taking penalties. And at least to me, I don't know, man. I think it's just a stupid boneheaded comment. Like, God, there's more physicality in the playoffs. Really? There's less penalties? No way. For this next segment, we're gonna go down a little bit more fun of a path, go down a little bit more of a hypothetical path, and we're gonna talk about a rumor that has been going around more related to the Toronto Maple Leafs and the future of Mitch Marner, as he's been somebody who has been talked about potentially being moved for the last little bit here. There's been a lot of conversation on where he could go. There's been a lot of conversation on who might want him. And I think it goes without saying that a lot of teams would probably be willing to give up a lot for him. He's a very skilled player. And what we're going to go over for this segment, just to make it a bit more fun, I've looked at the list. Caleb has not. We're going to take a look at a list made by Hannah Stewart of Bleacher Report, going over basically four proposals for Mitch Marner that could potentially happen. And I'm pretty sure a few of these teams, I don't know which actually, except for one. I remember hearing one of rumors surrounding one of these teams, which is the first one. So we can hop right into it if we want to do that. But
all right.
the first team on this list, I think I've heard rumors about this. I heard about this before I read this, is the Chicago Blackhawks. Right off the jump. Potentially getting somebody, getting a star teammate to put right next to Connor Bedard and just instantly basically potentially propel your team back into maybe not contention, but at least you're looking at a potential low, maybe like middle of the pack on the eastern side. And the offer that they sort of have, that they throw out there right off the jump, is Chicago gets Marner. That's all they get. Nothing else. No other fun little tasters in there.
Cool.
Toronto gets Oliver Moore, Kevin Korchinski, and a 2024 first-round pick, which belongs to Tampa Bay, which I think needs to be pointed out. So it's the number 20th pick.
Okay, so, yeah. I mean, first off, I think this is probably just going to be a trend. Like, obviously, I don't know what the rest of these offers are, but obviously the return's a little bit underwhelming.
Yes.
I think just because, obviously, I think the unsaid part of all these trades is going to be plus giant contract extension for Mitch Marner. Like, I think that's probably also part of it, eh? So I think I look at that and I say, okay, like, putting that in there. I think Toronto wouldn't be happy with that. I can't
it's two good prospects.
Yeah. I can't say I know too much about those prospects in terms of where they were drafted or anything, like going off the dome. I've never heard of them before. I don't know if you have more background on them than I
can give a bit of insight. Kevin Korchinski is like he's more of an offensive defenseman. I think he was a first-round pick, and there's a lot of people pretty excited for him. Last year was his rookie season, I think, like his first season in the NHL, and I think he kind of underperformed. So
But still,
I
still young,
can't
I
say
assume.
yes, no, he's 19. But I don't know as much about
Well, yeah.
Oliver Moore.
Okay.
But what the article, I can just read to you what the article has to say on him. He is a fast and agile player that has excellent attention to detail. He played for the University of Minnesota last season, and he has to work on his consistency.
Program.
But he could be a good addition if the Leafs are willing to be patient, which is kind of the more important thing with this entire offer as a whole. Is Korchinski is instantly that's an NHL player. Like even if he wasn't necessarily like incredible in his rookie season, he still absolutely could turn into a great player. He could turn into a great offensive defenseman in the future. Same thing with Oliver Moore. He's a prospect. He, like you said, University of Minnesota, a great program. That has the potential to be very, very good for Toronto. Will they get that kind of output in the first or even second season? No. No, they won't. You're getting basically potentially 3 elite prospects is kind of what you're
Yeah.
getting here.
Hearing that from you, and then looking up exactly where they were drafted, and I think just recontextualizing it in the context of this is the NHL. This isn't like the NFL of your first round picks are going to go out and play right away.
Yeah.
Um, these are these are two first round prospects that they're including in this deal,
Do you
plus
know
a
when
first round
Oliver
pick.
Moore was
I got
drafted? Do you have that in front of you?
19th overall.
When was that this
19th
year?
overall. 2023. Yep. So
Okay.
I think that honestly makes this, and Kevin Korchinski was 7th overall.
Yeah.
So those are both pretty just impressive prospects in general. Yeah, that I think that makes that trade look a lot better for the Maple Leafs, and maybe even makes me say, hey, Blackhawks, I think you're giving up a little bit too much in this trade. I think maybe one of those prospects in a first
Yeah.
rounder, maybe.
No, I
Um,
will say I again I'll say this. I didn't know a lot about Oliver Moore beforehand. I was surprised to see Korchinski's name in there. I feel like he was
yeah,
the surprising one to me because I know I like I said, I feel like I heard a lot of good things about him going into that season with Chicago. I know like the expectations for him, he was definitely in the shadow of Connor Bedard without a doubt. That I feel like that barely even
well,
needs to be
yeah,
said.
I think
Like
they're
it's
gonna have to.
like which I think kind of was in his favor in a sense because I didn't really know that he had a poor season. I just didn't think about it because everybody was talking about Connor Bedard. So he's got the chance here to slide right in like nothing happened and potentially be a great player for Chicago or in this scenario Toronto. I do agree with you. I feel like Chicago's given up a lot, especially considering I even with Marner, I would not consider them a team that I think
No.
I would not put
And
money on them sniffing the playoffs. But
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think the big thing here is you're gonna be have to be like, is now the time for Chicago to give up prospects and youth
exactly.
for
Yeah.
a veteran? I think that's kind of where this trade proposal falls apart in my head because it's like, I don't know if Chicago is necessarily the team to do it because if they have to give up even one of these prospects plus a future first, I'm looking at that and saying like, yeah, I think that would be great. I think it would be great for Bedard's development. I think it would be great to kind of propel them out of the basement. But I'm like, I think if I'm Chicago's GM, I think I'm saying like, no, I'll just rather develop the guys that I have.
Yeah.
Korchinski and Moore are both 19. Korchinski is only literally 2 days younger than I am. So like,
Holy.
he's not exactly like, which is kind of crazy to think about, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, so I don't know. I'd be looking more into develop the guys that you have who, even if like in Korchinski's case, hasn't panned out in the NHL yet, they're literally teenagers. So
Oh yeah.
that there's obviously high potential, and I think if I'm Chicago, I bank on that more than the what I could get in Marner at this point in their team's rebuild.
So we're saying no to this offer right off the bat. If you're Toronto, you're shutting it down.
I would say if I'm Toronto, I honestly might
Or
say
even
no
both
to it from
ways.
both sides.
Yeah.
I would say I think Chicago say I honestly don't think either of them are going to be happy with this deal.
Yeah.
Because I think from Chicago's side, what I just said, from Toronto's side, I don't know. It's kind of a hard thing to do because they're in more of a win now mode, and I
Yeah.
think those two prospects as teenagers coming in this big of a deal, oh my god, the pressure. Like
Oh my God.
I just don't think
They
that's
would
gonna
not.
be good
They
for their
wouldn't. No, it
development.
wouldn't work out at all. I agree with you. And just to like, I agree with you completely. I was gonna follow that up and say the exact same thing. I would say no from either side. At least for Chicago, I just like I pointed out, I don't see you're moving your team from here to like here and playoffs is still here, right? Like it's not going to be enough. And I feel like this is the type of trade you make maybe in a year or two, but it's not one you make now. And especially and if you look at the other side for Toronto, I think you said it well right there. They're in a win now mode, and I remember when we first talked about Marner potentially being on the move and what Toronto could be potentially trying to do this offseason. The first thing I remember saying is you need to move him for somebody who can give you maybe not equal immediate NHL presence, but it needs to be something that allows you to continue to contend. And I don't necessarily know if this is the trade that does that. Which, if we want to move on here and move to the second one, this trade might make you angry. It made me a little angry because this one kind of works. This one kind of fits that side for Toronto a little bit. So, and that is with the Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay.
Yeah. In this scenario,
I think
Vegas.
I already know where this is going.
Yeah. Well, you might. Vegas gets Marner. Simple as that. They get a new big star to add to their clusterfuck of a team that is filled with stars already, and Toronto gets Shea Theodore and a 2024 first round pick. So they get a new addition to their defense. They get a new addition to their defense who can play first line, slides right in, is very good defensively. He's a good two-way player. He can score as well. And you're getting a first-round pick on top of that. I actually like that. I like that for Toronto. I think that that evens them out a little bit.
Yeah. I would honestly, yeah, I mean, I understand it making you mad as someone who's in the same division as Vegas, but I honestly don't see who says no.
Exactly.
The biggest,
that's the hard thing.
I think that's one that works.
Works in every way but the cap.
I'm kind of looking into what I kind of, yeah. We can get into that later. I think the one thing I was gonna say was maybe I'm kind of realizing in my head this wouldn't have worked because I believe he's a free agent like right now, like after because the season is over. But yeah, Marchessault was gonna be what came to mind. But I believe
he's older too.
He's not. Yeah, I think I don't think he'd be able to be traded just because he's currently in free agency.
Yeah.
Like I think.
Well, he's not.
I mean,
But it wouldn't make
July
any
1st,
sense.
he's a free agent.
I was about to say exactly. It wouldn't make any sense for Toronto to want that. I also think Shea Theodore is a lot more valuable, than Marchessault at this point in their careers. And that's not a diss on Marchessault. I just think I don't remember off the top of my head how old Shea Theodore is, but I don't think he's as old as Marchessault. Like is he 30? I don't even know if he's 30.
I don't know. I think the other thing to consider with Theodore, because the reason you're getting rid of Marner is, I mean,
he's 28.
A little bit poor performance in the playoffs, but more so contract-wise, right? Because you're going to have to pay him a ton. And I just wonder, like, what's the contract trade-off here? Because Toronto needs to shed cap.
If you have the number for Marner, I can tell you Shea Theodore, because I have Shea Theodore's in front of me. And that's 5.2
Okay, I don't have Marner's, but I can pull that up real quick.
Yeah, because I was about to say I know Marner's is above 10. I think it's like 10 or 11 ish. I'd be surprised if it was lower.
It's 10-9.
Yeah. Like no matter what, the quote in this article says it best. And just the fact, before we get angry comments about Vegas finding a way to add yet another star player, let us state that if any team can figure out how to fit Marner under the cap, it's the Vegas Golden Knights. Don't believe them, just look at their trade history / cap shenanigans in the last 2 seasons. And yep, that's pretty much how I'd put it as well. They'll figure it out.
Pretty much. I mean, because I think we both kind of hinted at it. The one thing that would tear this deal apart is that Vegas wouldn't have the cap space.
No.
But yeah, that's a good point by You said
They'll
Hannah
figure it
Stewart,
out.
who was the person who wrote the article. Yeah, they'll figure it out because they've done it a million times before. And yeah, I think that's a great deal for Toronto too, just because you get like defense has been one of their weak points, and you immediately get a solid defenseman. I think with the big, I think the first round pick is interesting thrown in there too. Evens out the value a little bit. I don't know how
Yeah.
many years Shea Theodore has left on his contract if Toronto is having to extend him too. Um,
I can check that.
that might be another question to put in there. But I think even like regardless of that, I think it's pretty even. And I think my caveat would be, as long as the Golden Knights can figure out how to make it work with their cap, I think both sides would say yes. I think that's a done deal. Honestly, as kind of ridiculous and like blue sky as it is.
Yep. No, I don't disagree with you either. He is UFA after next season. So there you go.
So it would be kind of their trading pending UFAs. And I think with Toronto, you could probably bring in Shea Theodore at a lower cap number than you could bring in Marner. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think assuming Theodore doesn't have a bonkers next season, I think you could probably bring him back like 6 or 7 million. I think he gets a raise. I don't think it's a crazy raise though. Like, I think he's 5.2 million for a player like Shea Theodore is a steal. I think if he asked for 8, that would suck. But I think you even pay him 8. I wouldn't be that mad at that. I do agree with you though. I think both teams say yes, assuming Vegas can figure out the cap. I will say that might be my favorite out of the bunch here. But we can still talk about the next one. This next one is a little bit interesting considering I think the first NHL segment we talked about today maybe giving Utah a little bit of something to sprinkle on top for their first season. But Utah is, and this will surprise you because we're mixing it up here. Utah gets Marner and nothing else. Then Toronto gets this. This is a wild trade. Alex Kerfoot. I don't even know how to say this guy's name. Defenseman Maverick Lamorello.
Never heard of him in my life.
And
but I
a
assume he's
2024
prospect.
second round pick.
Ooh, I mean, after the Shea Theodore deal, like this is looking rough. I don't know this is another thing we'll have to look at the prospect. Where
Maverick Lamoureux is a
prospect.
2022 first round pick. Just to add, do you want me to read out the thing here that I just found on him?
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
yeah, because I was gonna say I didn't know who he was either. He was a 2022 first round pick. Is still a raw prospect, but he does have an NHL ceiling. He's 6'7", but a fluid skater, a quality that is becoming less rare but no less beneficial, and combines his skill with an awareness of how to use it.
Okay.
So there you go. That is
29th
I'm
overall.
assuming I'm
Okay.
butchering that last name, but yeah, that is him. That is who he is.
Okay. So another first round prospect, but this deal I just think is the worst for the Leafs just in general.
Yeah.
In these other two deals, you got a first round pick back. In this deal, you're only getting a second, even though it's probably the worst return. Like I'd take the two prospects that you got in the Blackhawks or Shea Theodore easily over Alex Kerfoot and another first round prospect.
I think the biggest thing,
lesser draft stock.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with this one, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate, is it's kind of meeting in the middle of where Vegas was and where Chicago was, where you're getting a prospect and you're getting a vet. And Alex Kerfoot is a fine player who will be fine. Like, he is a good depth, second line at best, third line forward is what I think of when I think Alex Kerfoot.
They know what they're getting. He was on the team not that long ago, wasn't he?
True. Yeah, no, he was. And you're also getting a defenseman prospect, which God knows Toronto needs more of those. So that's not a bad thing for them either. I don't know. I agree with you though. I do think this is my least favorite. I will say that right off the jump. I don't think we have to stick around on this one too long. The only reason I like it, I like it in concept because I like Marner going to Utah. I think that's fun. I think the NHL would like that too. I think that's just a good outcome where you're instantly just giving a good player to your new expansion team. Like it's It just makes things a little bit more interesting, I think. As for Toronto, I don't think this is something they want. This is the type of trade you make when the whole NHL knows that you're trying to get rid of them and you don't have another choice.
Yeah.
That's what this looks like.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, this would be a worst case scenario for Leafs fans. If we just want to, I assume we both think the same way. Utah runs to the phone to call
absolutely.
this in, and Toronto is immediately hanging it up.
Yeah, no, I think, especially with the context of that first offer with the Chicago thing, that's not the better of the two.
If you've got those two offers on the back burner, like you're laughing Ryan Smith.
So to give a short ranking,
off the phone.
To give a short ranking, I think it's pretty clear so far. Vegas is the first one, Chicago second, and then Utah third so far. We have one more.
Yeah.
We have one more.
Okay.
Featuring, this one's similar to Vegas in a lot of ways. The team acquiring him, I think, is the most interesting. I think this is a very interesting team to be getting him. A lot of the same issues with pulling it off is kind of there, at least with what I'm thinking of when I think of like cap. But that is the New Jersey Devils, which is a team that underperformed this last season, but absolutely has the talent to pull something off. The more interesting thing is whether they have the cap to pull it off, like I said. And I don't necessarily have that same confidence that I have with Vegas that they can pull off some wizardry. But nonetheless, we can get into the trade. Again, just to switch things up.
I also feel like their cap situation would be better than Vegas, though.
It probably is. It probably is. But I still think that no matter what, you're still paying him $10 million. And I don't think the player that Toronto gets back is getting paid that much, and nowhere close to 10 mil, but nonetheless,
the Devils absolutely have the cap space for it.
Do they? Okay,
they have 18 million in cap space.
All right, this is the trade to do. But anyway,
I haven't even heard what they're getting back.
Yeah, New Jersey gets Marner and nothing else, not a cent more. Toronto gets John Marino, defensive defenseman.
Okay.
And a 2025 first round pick. So a little bit further down the road.
Okay.
So you're not getting this next year for New Jersey, you're getting the year after that in first round pick. Which is interesting. I'm gonna give context on John Marino anyway, just to like throw it in there. But yeah, defensive defenseman, fairly solid, fairly consistent. Kind of the type of guy you're trying to add to Toronto's backside no matter what. At least in my head, that's what I think of what Toronto would probably want to bring in. But I don't know. It's this one's a bit more. I'll throw it over to you because you haven't given your take on it yet. But I don't know. For me, it feels like a poor man's Vegas deal. To give my take.
Yeah, which honestly to me makes it feel like the most realistic out of any of the ones that we've done so far.
That's fair too.
I think Chicago, we talked about it. I think both teams don't want to do that for their own reasons. I think Vegas is possible, and I think both teams, I think it could work, but cap space gets in the way, and that just feels like it's not too absurd to be true. The Utah deal, I don't think Toronto's getting enough to make that worth their while, even if the market is a little bit deflated. With this deal, I look at it and I think more like, yeah, no, I could see that, and I could see both teams walking away happy. I think I know this article, I think we've been kind of sitting on this topic on the back burner for a while, but I think this article just got a lot smarter, and it had a little bit of foresight because of what recently happened with Sheldon Keefe going to the Devils, and I wouldn't be shocked if he wanted to have one of his former players back, and that kind of, if they had I don't know if they had a good relationship or not, but if they did, I'm sure it wouldn't hurt for him to go to his former coach. Yeah, this is probably the one that I'd say is the most realistic. I think both teams, New Jersey has the cap space. I think it'd be great for Toronto to improve defensively and strictly with a defensive defenseman. It feels like one of those players that could help them get over that playoff hump. Like I could see that being a huge contribution. Yeah. Where it just feels like, yeah, you get a little bit of rid of a little bit of the flash, but it kind of picks itself up in the playoffs, and you still get a first round pick out of it later down the road. And with New Jersey, you get a veteran to support your young core. I honestly, the more I kind of talk about it, talk myself into it. I think this is my favorite out of the four
yeah,
for
I
both
think it's
for
my
both teams.
yeah, I think it's my favorite. If we're just talking based on most likely to happen, I still think the best offer for Toronto as a whole is the Shea Theodore trade. But
Yeah,
then again, I still think John Marino is absolutely a great defenseman. I think he's like style wise, I think he probably fits better. I think that's probably a better
yes,
fit.
yeah,
Like I just this the reason I think this is realistic is because at the end of the day, if I'm a Toronto fan looking at this trade when it comes through, I in my head my first thought is fuck, we could have got more. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this trade when you're trading a guy like Marner. You're not going to get a Marner level star for Marner. Like, I think
yeah,
everyone knows that. When you're trading a player like Marner, you're not going to get that. Best case scenario is you get a good package deal. This is the type of deal that I look at and go, yeah, no, this works for both sides because New Jersey stacks the offense a little bit more. They just add a little bit more. They add somebody who can help out their young core and potentially make a run at it. Marner gets less. He's going to get a lot less exposure in New Jersey. He's going to get a fresh start, and he's going to get the chance to play with a lot of young and very fun players. I think he'd be happy to go to New Jersey. I think Sheldon Keefe's a good point as well. Looking at the Toronto side, like you pointed out, defensive defenseman adding to that core, can't complain much about that. And you're getting a first round pick. You can't complain about that either. At least to me, I think it is probably the most realistic because it's the most down. It's the most down to earth. It's not too low. It's not too high. It's right in the middle. And at least to me, I agree with you right there. I think by far it's the most realistic, and out of all of these, it's probably the one that's gonna happen. I think the Vegas one, I just get stuck on. That'd be such a crazy trade. That'd be a blockbuster.
it would be. Yeah, it would be. I just think there's way too many logistical issues, and I think it's too
Absolutely,
kind
yeah.
of like, and too many. That feels like very pie in the sky, like 12-year-old on NHL trade engine kind of thing, like, or 12-year-old post Instagram, like, oh my god, this is gonna happen, you know, like it doesn't feel realistic, especially with all the noise about trading Marner. Like you pointed out, you're not gonna get a Marner level star, and Shea Theodore isn't a Marner level star, but it
No.
isn't. It's as close as you're gonna get. It's as close as you're
Yeah.
gonna get. So that's why I think the John Marino deal. I like even more for both sides because I don't think you can necessarily understate the fit aspect of it either with Marino. I think that's another thing. I think that fit works out even better than Theodore does because they don't need more offense; they need defense. Um, yeah, I think if I'm to power rank the deals, I'd say this last one with the Devils, then Vegas, then Chicago, um, then the Utah deal.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see it. I think that the Chicago and Utah I think are probably my like. A, I don't think that would happen, and B, I think those are just kind of weak proposals. But I think those other two are really interesting. It'll be
I
interesting to see how it all plays out.
if I were to rank them on likelihood, I'm almost tempted to put Chicago higher than Vegas just because I think that offer is good. If it was different situations on both sides, I think that is a fair offer.
Yeah,
But it's more the situations that are at stake there that make things a little bit tougher. I don't think Toronto's looking for prospects, but if you're just looking package for package, that's about as even as you're going to get, at least to me. You're getting a first round pick and two prospects. If you're any team that isn't Toronto, that's a perfect situation, right? It's just the fact that Toronto is Toronto. They want to contend. Don't want to go and be that crappy non-playoff team for a while. That is a poor situation for them. So at least to me, I don't know. And I think I do agree with you though. I think without a doubt, New Jersey is probably the most likely one.
to move things over to the NBA, obviously we're I don't know if in almost done the conference finals. The Timberwolves recently just won Game 4 to avoid a sweep, which to say for the Indiana Pacers, who are the team that we're going to talk about, they could not do the same thing against the Celtics. They got swept, and I think they're a really interesting team to talk about, just because of the fact that going into the playoffs, I believe they were a 6 seed, They're 47-35. It's a bit of a surprise run. Not to say that this wasn't a good roster, wasn't a talented roster going into the playoffs, but you look at them, and I think before the bracket started, before we played any games, I don't think anybody would have had them going to the conference finals. And I think even though they got swept, I think it's important to kind of point out that this was still a competitive series. I mean, you look game, they're the only one that's not that wasn't really a close game was game 2, because you've got game 4, Celtics won by 3, game 3 Celtics also won by 3. Game 2 was the one that wasn't competitive. Celtics won by 16. And then game 1 was in overtime, and that game was the one where the Pacers were about to win, and then Jaylen Brown had that game-tying 3-point that was a bit of a miracle shot. And so you look at this team and say, this team was, even though they got swept, conceivably like going blow for blow with what's probably the best team left in the NBA playoffs. And despite that, they're still a young team that has lots of young talent, and is still kind of developing. Where do you see this Pacers team kind of going in the future, Simon? Do you think this is success that's sustainable and can potentially even be improved to championship level, or do they need to do a lot to get past where they went this season?
I don't know. I personally think that they have a lot of the youth and talent and depth across the board to really pull it off. I think it's sustainable. To immediately answer your question, I like a lot of what I see from the Pacers. I mean, they've got the star and they've got a lot of the guys around him, like Tyrese Halliburton. At this point, I feel like there's been enough said about how insanely good of a player he is, especially with how good he was in the regular season leading up to the playoffs, and he was a huge part outside of the 2 games he missed of their run. So obviously, I think he's gonna be a big reason they'll be able to contend for the next little while. And even just going down the team, Pascal Siakam. I mean, you're a Toronto fan. I don't have to tell you that he's good at basketball. Like he's gonna be a good second or third star for this team for however long he chooses to stay there. Miles Turner, great defensive center, and then obviously in the playoffs, at least I can't say I knew his name very much before this run.
Yeah,
Andrew Nemhard, I believe is how you say it, had an absolutely insane run towards the end there once Halliburton went out. I had it right in front of me. I'll pull it up again. He in the game 3, he was able to score 32 points, and then in game 4 he scored 24. Both were team highs, which is very impressive that he was able to step up right when the team needed him. Also getting both 9 assists and 10 assists in those games respectively. Just an insane run for him. If he continues to show out for them, I think they've got a lot of good things going for them. I think I like what I see. I mean, even going down their just depth chart. TJ McConnell, great backup point guard. Obi Toppin, who I honestly forgot about, but was a great prospect at one point for, I believe, the Knicks. Like, there's a lot to like about this team for the future. And I think that's the one thing that really sticks out to me is the future. This team was not expected to go where they went this season, and they shocked a lot of people, and I don't think people will be as shocked when they do similar next season and the season after that. I just think, at more than anything, I think this team is absolutely ready. I think they're done being in the basement. When they made that trade for Pascal Siakam, they absolutely made a statement to the entire NBA, and this is them kind of showing exactly that trade was was a sign that you should be worried. It wasn't a fluke. I don't think this season will be a fluke. I think they're going to continue to be good for the next little while.
Yeah, and I think when you have a player like Halliburton, I think you're going to be good no matter what. I think he immediately brings up your floor to a certain extent. And yeah, I think they've got a lot of great depth pieces. I think they've got a lot of great developing talent. It's a lot of young pieces. Like Nemhard, I believe, is a second-year player. To see this kind of performance in the playoffs against the Celtics, like, without your star player on the floor, like, I believe he was the top point getter in their last game, game 4. I think he got 24, was I believe the number.
Yep. No, I think that's right.
But yeah, like, that's an insane performance to see, and like to kind of see that development continue, and maybe he starts to make more of a name for himself, where guys like us who are more casual basketball fans kind of perk their eyes up and go like, who the
It's a
hell is
name I
this
should
guy?
know.
Uh, yeah, exactly. I think that yeah, it's really promising. I think the big thing, and you look up the Pacers on the old Google machine right now, and one of the big headlines is and as it should be, is will they be able to re-sign Pascal Siakam?
Yeah.
Um, the headline a day ago was a quote from Halliburton saying he will do everything in my power to make sure that Siakam resigns with the Pacers. So obviously it's going to be a pretty decent contract, but I think at this point, um, with the type of player that Siakam's proven himself to be, not just with the Pacers, but obviously with his time with the Raptors, I think you have to get that done.
Absolutely. Yep.
And in order to keep this train kind of rolling, because as much as you need young talent, I think having a more veteran presence like Siakam, obviously Siakam's not like old or anything, but more of a veteran experience presence like Siakam in the room, I think is really important.
Yep. And I completely agree with that. I just think more than anything, actually, I just think if you lose Siakam here, who's your second scorer is kind of what sticks out to me. Like and that's not a diss at the rest of the Pacers. Like I said, I like a lot about what I see from their depth. They have multiple players above 12 points on the season, like just going through their regular season stats. They clearly have people who can score, but to me, it's the next guy on that list, I guess, becomes Miles Turner, but I don't see him replacing how, like, I don't think he fills that Siakam slot as well. And then at that end, who fills in the next guy and the next guy and the next guy and all that. But it's at the end of the day, I think losing Siakam would be such a huge loss for this team. Especially, he was their leader in points in the playoffs. He was their leader in points in the regular season. It's very clear that he is that guy. He's the guy that they can rely on when they need somebody who can score this season. I mean, Halliburton, as good as he's your point guard. He's pass first. He had almost 11 assists on the season per game. Like, it's at the end of the day, you want someone elite that he can be hitting with those passes, and I think this season it was Siakam, and preferably in the future it's going to continue to be Siakam. But if you lose him, that gets a lot harder, and all of a sudden, the pressure's a lot more on Halliburton. I think to really, really up his scoring, because not to say that he's a poor scorer, but I mean, you want somebody else is kind of what I mean. I think you want to just add to that, because as good as a elite point guard can get you, you need someone who that elite point guard can hit for scores. And I think that Siakam is that guy. And as much young talent as they have, they are not ready to replace a guy like Siakam quite yet.
Yeah. I would definitely agree, and I think I won't claim this point for myself because this is something I saw in the score article that they have about the Pacers. Don't have it in front of me, but one of the points they made is I believe Halliburton had a hamstring strain a lot of the second half of the season. So they were saying in this article, we haven't necessarily seen this duo up to full health on Halliburton's part. So I think even obviously to all the points you just made as to why you keep Siakam, but I think you do it also just to see what the duo can operate at full potential, having an off season together, because obviously a mid season acquisition, like having a full season to kind of grow, and help this team mature, because you want to continue this momentum. Well, obviously the Pacers aren't going to be happy that they lost in the conference finals. I think you can't be disappointed with it. It's a lot farther than anybody would have expected you to go as a 6th seed. So I think you just have to keep continuing that momentum. And if you lose Siakam, I think that stops a lot of that. I think if we want to, because they're 47-35. That is, I mean, it's in a 3-way tie for 5th. They ended up 6th out of that deal. That they were also tied with the 76ers, who went in the play-in game. But I'm looking at this. They finished behind, obviously, the Celtics, Knicks, Bucks, Cavs, and Magic. Do you see them moving up in the standings regular season wise next year?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think if they keep Siakam, yes. I do think this is just a start. You also got to think about the fact that they got Siakam, I believe, halfway through the year. So I think, assuming we get to see a full season out of Siakam and Halliburton, I think absolutely I think they absolutely could get a lot better, and I don't know. It'll be cool to see. I think they're going to be the team to watch for the next little while, and I know I'm excited for them, but
Yeah.
I don't know. They're a cool team to see. I'm a big fan of Halliburton more than anything else.
Yeah.
I think. He's a very fun player to watch.
Too.
He's got an interesting jump shot, which makes me like him. So as a whole, I think I've watched his career a little bit. He's a fun player to watch. So I think
as a casual basketball fan, it's like the Pacers and I think the Kings too, which obviously Halliburton's former team, that I think have been the two teams that like excite me a lot in terms of like who I'm gonna put on to watch. The Kings more so last year. I kind of fell off a little bit, but I think especially with Halliburton and bringing in Siakam as you kind of refer to me as a Toronto fan. I don't know if I'd quite go that far. I'm the most casual.
You're a Supersonics fan. That's what you are.
Exactly. I am a Canadian citizen, so when the Raptors do good, I'm not gonna be mad about it. But obviously, like the Raptors are the center of attention here, so I liked Siakam going into this, so I think that pairing is awesome. So like putting on a couple Pacers games this year, just being like, this is an exciting team, and I'm excited to see where they'll go, just like you said. I think if you are a Pacers fan, like you've got to be disappointed in this result, but I think just like thrilled for the future.
Absolutely, you have to be. I think because your young star is continuing to show how elite of a point guard he's going to continue to be, and you've got a guy who could potentially be that number 2 for him. I think a lot of years, and history shows that that's sometimes all you need, especially if both of them can play up to their potential. I mean, we'll just have to see what happens with it, because they have a lot of guys around them as well. It's not like it's not like they've only got Siakam and Halliburton and a bunch of depth guys. A lot of those depth guys absolutely are skilled too, and they've built a really good team there in Indiana. And I do think the NBA is better off when Indiana is playing well. I think of like those Paul George teams that went to a couple Eastern Conferences against LeBron, and I think both. Maybe it was only Miami. I think it was only Miami, but nonetheless, like I think of those teams. Whenever we've had Indiana playing in those big games, it's always been fun to watch, and I think that has been sort of passed on from that Paul George era back into this era of Indiana Pacers basketball, and I'm all for it. I think it's awesome. I think they're a fun team to watch, not necessarily in the biggest market, and I think that just makes it that much better as well. So for me, I'm all for it. I think it's clear you're all for it too, Caleb. So I think as a whole, it's pretty cool to see.
All right, thank you everybody for watching the Trick Play podcast. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTubes. If you're watching, that's probably right below you. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you get your social media stuff. We're there. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. We are. Just search up Trick Play Sports Podcast. We'll be there. None of this fresh take business. We're just ourselves now. That'll probably be the last week I mentioned that. So if you haven't caught on to that by now, make sure to check us out. We are just the Trick Play Sports Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. In terms of a shout out for this week, kind of had a bit of a hard time coming up with one. Normally I go with something either something I'm not happy with or something a little bit wacky. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go for something a little bit more wholesome. It was recently my girlfriend's birthday, over the weekend. So I mean, first of all, shout out to her. She is amazing, so happy birthday to her. One of the things we did on her birthday, that's going to get the shout out from me this week, was the Yamnuska Wolf Sanctuary.
I have heard of that.
Yeah. So it's super cool. We got to do the interactive tour. Now, this was expensive, but it was still very cool.
Did you become a wolf?
Yes, exactly. They give you the werewolf potion.
Oh
Uh,
hell yeah!
no, yeah.
They just give you
Oh,
the
so
ears.
yeah, exactly. Um, but no, it's super cool. Basically, what they do is they because it's not just wolves. They're wolf dogs, so it's like part
Right.
wolf, part dog. So they'll let you in the interactive tour. They let you in the enclosure with the wolves, and you basically just get to sit there, and they'll come like all the way right up to you, some of them, and they'll like eat right out of your hand, and they'll just kind of like go up and sniff you. Super cool experience. They're huge, and I don't think I've ever had that where it's like you've got to, because obviously with like a zoo and everything else, you're kind of just watching through glass. I've never had that kind of up close and personal experience um, with an animal like that. So that was super cool. Would definitely recommend. It's a little bit out of the way, being in Calgary. It's a bit of a drive, but if you guys kind of live in the area, definitely something to go check out. I'd definitely recommend it.
I was gonna say I think I've driven by it, but I can't remember where I drove by it because it's like in the mountains somewhere.
It's by Cochrane.
Like,
By
oh,
Cochrane.
Cochrane, really? Oh, I didn't know that. I would have thought
It's
further up.
past Cochrane. It's
Yeah,
past
okay.
Cochrane, but
Maybe I'm thinking of
in
a
that
different.
direction.
I know I've seen like a wolf dog sanctuary, so maybe I'm thinking of a different one. Like, because I thought I saw it like out in. Oh heck, fuck! It might. I thought it was closer to Banff, but who knows? Like, anyway, my shout out for the week. I was gonna shout out my own dog having no survival instincts, but I have a better shout out than that. I think I will. What I'll shout out instead is Calgary drivers, because who doesn't love to shout out Calgary drivers? Of an interaction I had while driving to the airport to pick up my mom, who flew out to Vancouver to go see Avril Lavigne, which apparently was very cool. I was driving out to I was driving out to pick her up from the airport, and I took my younger sister with me, which is always fun. Giving her the chance to see me swear at other Calgary drivers. Just getting a true front row seat to that is always fun. Anyway, there was this, and I need to add this as well. This dude was driving like a old like Nissan style Civic from like probably 2002. Very old car. Did not look like it should be going 140. But this dude cuts me off on whatever. Cuts me off on Stoney, which is the big major road in Calgary. If you are from or have been to Calgary, you know what Stoney is. It's the big road. It's the big one. He cuts me off on Stoney, and instantly I start laughing and just call him an idiot. And then I look, and he flips me off. And I just broke into tears because I thought it was so funny. This guy cuts me off on Stoney, actively cuts me off, flips me off, and then flips me off, and then sped off, and it was awesome. So I'd like to shout at him. If for some reason that guy is watching the podcast and remembers that situation happening, I just wanted to give a shout out to that guy because he made my day.
I doubt he'd remember that interaction if he flipped you off after he cut you off.
Exactly.
I doubt
You know
this is
he
the
does
only
that
time
pretty
he's
often.
flipped
Yeah.
someone. Yeah.
Oh, it was so funny though. Because it's just incredible the amount of brain waves you must have in your head of going, oh, I just cut you off. Fuck you. It's just incredible. So shout out that guy. That guy made my entire existence for that little moment. There's not a lot of like situations where while driving someone cuts me off and it makes me laugh, but that guy made me laugh. I think that's what we should start doing. If you cut someone off and go, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. That was a little dumb." Flip them off. Let's start a movement.
Confidence in yourself.
Yeah, let's start a movement. No, you were in the wrong place. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Like Caleb said, make sure to check out all of the stuff on the audio side, because since we've left Fresh Take, we gotta point out the fact that you gotta go check that side out now. We want to get as much viewership on that side as humanly possible in the next little bit, and subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. We don't say that often enough. Subscribe the fuck out of the subscribe button. I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? If you know, subscribe. So there you go. Go and
Oh. Are you done?
I am done.
You're done? Okay.
I'm done.
And remember, everybody, most importantly, more important than
More
subscribing,
important.
more important than listening to the audio podcast,
Who cares?
more
about that?
important than anything else you will ever do in your life. Penix better have a warm ass. See you next week.